Alright, what's going on everybody? My name is Jaceified. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys a Magicka Templar healer slash DPS build for 4-man content. So stuff such as Veteran Dungeons, Dragonstar Arena, Blackrose Prison. Now, this is a support build, so keep that in mind because you're not going to be pulling the highest DPS in the group. However, you're still going to be able to pull some pretty good DPS and also provide really good support and heals for your group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about my race, my attributes, my Mundus stone. Then I'm going to talk about skills and gear and champ points. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to show you guys some gameplay footage of me in Blackrose Prison. And I'm going to show you guys a parse so you can see what this build is capable of doing as far as DPS goes. So with all that being said, let's get right into the video. Okay, so for my race, I'm using High Elf. Now you can use Breton, however, I'm going to recommend High Elf because they are doing a little bit more DPS because they have extra spell damage. However, Breton is really good too because they give you a lot better sustain and they let you change up your setup a little bit. Overall, they're both pretty good. Either you can't go wrong with either one, but I'm a High Elf here and I'm going to recommend using a High Elf. For my attributes, I have 5 points into health. The reason I have this is because before my health was a little bit too low. It was below 17,000, which I don't recommend doing. So I recommend putting at least 5 points. I mean, you might be able to get away with less, but definitely don't go below 17,000. And that leaves me with 59 points into Magicka, which puts my Magicka around 30k. So I'm at 30,187, just shy of 30.2 thousand. This is it's kind of low for a Magicka build, but it's at a decent amount, especially because my Magicka regen is 1500 unbuffed, so my resources regen pretty quick. And also this goes up in combat with things such as Warhorn. So my spell damage is pretty high for being unbuffed. It's at 2,671, and I'm at 43.4% crit. So obviously this is going to go up in combat, and it's also going to go up whenever I use a spell damage pot. So now I'm at 3,205 spell damage and 53.4% spell crit, and my regen is at 1720. So overall, pretty good stats, pretty well rounded for a healer build. My spell pen is just shy of 8,000. This is a pretty average amount. It's going to go up in combat too, so I'm not trying to worry about it too much. But for my Mundus stone, I have the Shadow. This is definitely the best stone to use right now for DPS. It's really, really strong. It's just crazy. Now, you can use the Lover if your spell pen is lacking, especially if you're lacking like group buffs too. Then you can switch to the Lover, but I really recommend using the Shadow. It's probably the best one currently. Now for my food, I'm using Clockwork Citrus Fillet. This is the gold food, which gives health, Magicka, and Magicka recovery. Now, if you don't want to use this food, like if you don't have access to it, if you don't want to waste it in some cases, then you can switch it out for Witch Mother's Brew, which is also solid. It just gives less resources overall. But you have the option, and if you are a Breton, you can get away with using blue food, which gives you more Magicka and more health. So overall, those are all good choices. Now that's all for my character sheet, so now we're going to talk about the gear sets. Okay, so for gear sets, you have a few different options. However, there are two things that I'm going to recommend that you keep constant no matter what you're using. The first thing is going to be Olarim. So you definitely want to always have this set on. It's a really strong set. It's really good for yourself and for your group. Gives you the Major Courage buff, which gives you a lot of weapon and spell damage. Now, this set, the reason why it's really strong is because when you proc it, you can pretty much, first of all, you can place it wherever you want. So I threw my shard and the set procced right in the center. And second of all, when you walk out of it, you retain the Major Courage buff, and it lasts the full duration. So as you see, it's not even on the floor anymore, and I'm standing over here, and I still have Major Courage. So that's why it's really, really strong, and that's why I always recommend having it on. Now, the second thing I always recommend having on is a Restoration Staff on your front bar. So we use Destro and Resto setup now, which is, it's kind of weird, but This is just how it's gonna have to be because of the skills we use. But restoration staff front bar, always have that on because you're gonna need it. But it also depends on what you're doing, so keep that in mind. But the next set we use is, I'm running Julianos right now. I have 3 jewelry and, like you saw before, the staff. I really recommend using infused on your jewelry, mainly because, like I said earlier, this is for 4-man stuff, so a lot of the fights are not gonna last as long, so you're not really gonna be getting that big of a benefit from Bloodthirsty or any other trait really. So I recommend infused, and I recommend using a spell damage glyph on all 3 of your jewelry pieces, because even at purple, it's still giving me a lot of spell damage. 262 is almost as much as the 5-piece bonus from Julianos, so it's really strong, and it's even stronger on a gold piece of jewelry. Now, you don't have to run Julianos. The other set I recommend using is another healer-based set, Infallible Aether. This set is really good. It's good for your group. You're going to lose a little bit of DPS on your end, but overall your group is going to benefit from it because you'll increase the uptime of minor vulnerability. And you also get minor slayer, so it's not that bad, but you do lose Magicka and a little bit of spell damage versus Julianos. But this is the other set I recommend using. Now you can use you can also use Burning Spell Weave if you have a restoration staff. I also have the jewelry. However, you have to use a Maelstrom Fire Staff to be able to use that set. And the reason I recommend using Lightning Staff is it's only really for if you have a stamina DPS in the group, or if your group is mainly stamina, because it's going to benefit your stamina DPS more than your Magicka DPS. But if you have a lot of Magicka DPS in the group, then you can just replace your Lightning Staff with an Inferno Staff, and then you can also run Burning Spell Weave, which will probably increase your DPS even more. But right now I have Julianos on with the Lightning Staff, so this is a flex spot. You can also run Mother's Sorrow if you have the jewelry. It's also a good set to use. So you have options for that. Now for your Monster Helm, you also have options, but I'm using Symphony of Blades because this is really good for helping out your allies. Gives them better resource management, especially the tank, because the tank is probably going to be the one who is under 50%, more than anyone else really. But good set. You have options here. You can run Balorg. I only recommend using Balorg for shorter boss fights. It's good. It's a self DPS set. There's also Slimecraw, which I recommend using if you really don't need Symphony. This will increase your DPS overall, so it's a good set to run. There's also Grothdar for AoE. It gives you Magicka, another good set. And then there's Valken Scoria. This set's good on Templar because Templars have a lot of AoE damage. Well, damage over time, more specifically. So this set's really good. And it also gives you health, so you can take off your health glyph on your helmet. But either way, you have options. You can play around with, so you can do whatever you want. Now, for my skills, there's also quite a few different setups for skills. The main one I'm using right now, I have Puncturing Sweeps. This is my DPS spammable. Mutagen, this is my heal, my main heal pretty much. I just cast this and I don't have to worry as long as it's up because my teammates are getting healed by it over time. Then I have Ritual of Retribution. This is for DPS and it's also for healing. Plus the Purify Synergy is really helpful because it cleanses anything. So definitely have this skill on. Then I obviously have Radiant Oppression for Execute. It still does a lot of damage even with a Restoration Staff on. So it's really nice. Then I have Breath of Life as my burst heal. And here I have Crescent Sweep on, but you're probably going to want to have, where is it? Warhorn. This is going to be better for your group. Especially if the tank doesn't have a Warhorn up. Definitely recommend having that. Now my back bar, I have Blockade. Simple enough. It's just for damage. It's also for the group because it's a lightning staff. Blazing Spear for AoE and the synergy. It does really good damage. It's also for placing the Olarum proc. So with this skill, you can pretty much place it wherever you want. Now, my next skill is Vampire's Bane. This is going to be a flex spot, so you can put whatever you want there. For a single target, I use Vampire's Bane. For AoE, I put on Solar Barrage. And then if I really need to, I'll put on Crushing Shock just for some, just to interrupt the range mobs. It also does decent range DPS, but mainly for the interrupt. Otherwise, I would just keep Vampire's Bane there. This is another flex spot. Power of the Light. This is just for the Minor Fracture and Minor Breach. It's not really going to do a lot of DPS for you, but it's a utility skill. It's for your group. So I usually replace it with Channeled Acceleration for myself if I want to do more DPS, because it gives me Minor Force. So you can put that there, but I have that there for now. Then I have Elemental Drain, which I always have on. This is just for myself, for Magicka Steel, and also for the group. And then my ultimate is Destruction Staff, so Elemental Range. I have the Lightning version because I have a Lightning Staff. This just lasts longer. The Flame version just does more damage. But I also have another flex spot on my front bar. This is usually what my setup looks like, but occasionally if I need to, I'll put on a shield here. And then if I really feel like my group's DPS is solid, then I can just put on Energy Orb and provide more support. Because, you know, if your DPS are really, really good, then you don't really need to be using sweeps. Might as well just give them, you know, the buffs they need. But even if they are doing good DPS, you definitely want to still cast like all your dots, because you're going to do a lot of DPS, especially because of the way my champ points are set up. I have a lot of CP into damage over time, so we're going to look at CP now. For blue, I have 52 Elfborn, 62 Elemental Expert, 32 Erosion, just so my spell pen is at a good amount. Then I have 18 Staff Expert, 23 Master at Arms, and then 81 Thaumaturge. Like I said before, I have this because I'm doing quite a bit of damage over time, so having I almost have the max amount. It's going to increase my damage by a lot. Now, for red, you can pretty much set this up however you want depending on what you're doing, but for right now, I have Ironclad, 81. You're going to want a good amount to Ironclad because it's going to reduce the risk of you being one-shotted. So I have 81 here. I have 43 in the Spell Shield, 48 Thick Skin, 49 Hardy, and 49 Elemental Defender. Now, like I said, you can play around with that depending on what you're doing. Same with the Green Tree. I have 43 Warlord. I probably don't need that much, but I have it there. One thing though is I have 100 Arcanist. I recommend putting 100 here just so you can get the max amount of recovery you can. And then I have 23 Tenacity. You can put more into this too. It really just depends on if you really need to or not. But you don't have to worry about it that much because with a Restoration Staff, you actually get more resources with your heavy attacks anyway. So it's completely up to you. Then I have 52 Tumbling and 52 Shadowboard, which is probably overkill, but again, you don't really need this. You can change it up however you want. So that's it for champion points. Now I'm going to show you guys some gameplay footage. So I'll show you a Parse, and then I'm going to show you gameplay of me in Blackrose Prison using this build. So with all that being said, let's jump right into it.